Assalamu alaikum. This is our 12th lecture. The topic of today's lecture is regional and economic integration. The learning objectives are as follows. Be familiar with the history, current scope and the future prospects of the world's most important regional economic agreements, including NAFTA, Mercosur, Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation. The second objective is to understand the implication for business that are inherent in regional economic integration agreements. Remember that thing in the last lecture we have seen the economic integration of the Europe. Today our focus will be on the other economic integration around the globe, which includes the NAFTA, Mercosur, Asia-Pacific economic cooperations, and these sort of different small cooperation integrations we are going to study, and why they have made this sort of agreements, and what are the benefits of these agreements for those countries. Before we proceed to today's lecture and we start with the NAFTA, we first talk we do the quick recap, quick summary of the last lecture. In the last lecture we started with the term regional economic integration. Regional economic integration is the agreement between the countries in order to increase the flow of trade flow of products, services and factor of production without each other. And the main intention of this integration is to reduce the tariff and non-tariff barriers. This is the main objective of this sort of integration. The second thing is regional trade blocs compete each other. What does it mean? Like when we talk about that these blocs are competing with each other, that means that like we discussed that, and the people, the scholar, the academics, they propose the term like fortress. These blocs are behaving or acting like a killer, that people or countries who are the members of those integration, they are safe, they are protected, and the countries which are not part of that agreements, they are not welcome to enter in that bloc. How they are behaving in that way? Like imagine the scenario of the European Union. They have the trade policies, the similar trade policies, and individual countries, they cannot make the self-agreement, independent agreement with the other countries. What they have to do, they have a common trade policies and common political opinion about other countries. In that way, they are not welcoming the investment from the outside of those member countries. Like they are really encouraging, they are motivating firms to go abroad in the other member states. But like they will not sort of provide the encouragement to the firms to go out outside the European bloc. But especially this is more concerned for the incoming firms. They will not entertain firms to enter in the EU bloc to give them more competition. Like for European Union, they collectively made the decision that to what extent Japanese companies can export or send their products to the European Union, and they later on they decided they cannot export products to European Union more than 17%. In that way, they are trying to create the obstacle for the firms belong to the outside of those blocks. And on the larger scale, if we see this, then we can see that these blocks compete with each other. They will be agreement from with block to block agreement. It will not be a country to country agreement or country to country relationship. It will be a more block to block things. Now we had discussed before in the last lecture, we had discussed about the level of integration. There are 5 levels of integration. The first integration, the level of integration, is the free trade area, where when countries they decide to integrate with each other, this is the first step they have to do. They have to remove the trade barrier, tariff and non-tariff barrier from each other. The second thing is custom union. Custom union is the next level of economic integration, in which eliminates the trade barriers between member countries and adopt a common external trade policy. Important thing is, like in the first one, free trade area, they have they had to remove the barriers, tariff and non-barrier, but beside that thing, they have a same external trade policy. This is called the custom union. The examples are Andean Community, which include Bolivia, Colombia, Ecuador, and Peru. And the third level of economic integration is the common market, in which similarly with the free trade area, they don't have the barriers. Like in the second one, they have the common trade policy. The new thing is they have free movement of factor of production. Factor of production, importantly, is the labor, immigration. They are with agreement, immigration agreement with each other. The fourth level of integration is the economic union, which have the facilities of, again, the removal of barriers, same trade policy, trade production factors, production factors, and they have the common currency, same tax policy, harmonized tax policy, same fiscal and monetary policy. And the typical example of economic union is the European Union, where they have introduced the same currency, euro, in January 2001. The last level of the level of economic integration is the political union. In political union, the whole country, all the member countries, they have the same political ideology. The political decisions on certain issues, they have to make a similar decision or on the same decision. All countries gain from the free trade and investment. And theoretically we see this, that because of this trade integration, what is the intention of this trade integration was that all countries should gain from that integration. According to trade theory, this is very beneficial. Like we have seen, because of the trade flow, it increases the integration, increases the trade flow and across countries, and it can increase it will affect positively on the economic growth of all countries. An important thing is this is beneficial for the both countries who are involved in the trade. That shows that this is a positive sum game. Linking countries together. Another benefit of this economic integration is they are linking countries together, making them more independent on each other, which making dependent on each other mean, what's the benefit of this thing, of this interdependence? Because of this thing, there will be a less chances of political some sort of some war between each other, because these countries are economically interdependent with each other. Creates incentive for political cooperation and reduce the likelihood of violent conflict. Because they will depend economically, they will depend on each other. Of course, then on the later stage, they will be more. We can say that they will think similarly towards the political decisions as well. In that way, there will be less chances of violent conflicts. Countries because of this similar integration means similarities and collaboration in economic issues, collaboration in political issues. It will give them other countries will treat them as a single political cloud, and they will deal collectively when they are going to deal some other political issues on a global stage. Like recently, European Union, they have decided collectively when they were making decision on the EU on imposing sanctions on Russia because Russia invaded the Ukraine. But the trouble with this sort of integration and collaboration with each other is, if the number of countries is really high, there will be really trouble for the countries, member countries, to come closer or come on the same point. What was the main reason why they got together was, if we talk about the Europe, the main reason was that they have experienced the two world wars, World War I, World War II, and after the World War II, they thought they should get together and they shouldn't have the World War III. In order to do so, they in 1951, their coal and steel industries across the countries, they got together and they made the agreement that they are going to do the trade with each other without the barriers. Later on, they made some development on this issue in 1957, and they made European Economic Community, and subsequently in 1987 they made a single European Act. They passed this act. According the background of this act was that countries were not doing sufficient and they were not taking enough steps to improve the economic integration across the countries, and they thought they passed a bill that by 1992 they have to be one market. There are certain main constituents of European Union. The first body is European Council, and the second one is European Commission, which is responsible for proposing EU legislation. The next one is European Parliament, and the last one is the Court of Justice. Now we talk about what are the benefits of making EU. First of all, they were saving the huge money because of making the single currency. For instance, take the example of the travelers when they have to travel from, for instance, Sweden to France. They have to change their currency, Swedish currency, or if we talk about some other country, Germany and France, a guy living in the Germany wants to travel to the France, they have to change their currency to French currency, and then and vice versa. Because of the single currency, they don't need to make such exchanges, some transaction, and it reduces the cost of transaction. It saved overall $40 billion in each year. The next one is it's because of the single currency, it's easy for the consumers to compare the prices across Europe, and for the firm level, it provides more competition for the firm. And we have studied this thing, the competition is good for the companies and for the economy as well. The next point is cost of production is reduced. The overall cost, because of the single currency and the factor of production, the people can migrate, the workers, the laborers, they can easily migrate from one country to another, and the companies can bring their raw material from one country to another without any barriers. So the cost of production is reduced. Gives a strong boost to the development of highly liquid pan-European capital market like Nasdaq. Because of this economic and financial integration, that it developed the liquid pan-European capital market, just like the Nasdaq. And the next and last point, the benefit is to increase the range of investment options for the individuals and the companies. Because of the same currency and because of the no restrictions across the Europe, the individuals it was easy for and feasible for the individuals and the institutions to make the investment in other country in firms belongs to the other country. Okay, EU is a good thing, like we have seen, and What is the cost? What is the negative things of the EU? Loss of control over national monetary policy. EU is not the optimal currency area. They have different wage rate, tax rate, business cycle, effect of shocks. And like the first one, the loss of control over national monetary policy, because of making the EU, now these countries, the member states, they have to make their fiscal and monetary policy in accordance with the European monetary and fiscal policy. Because of this thing that they have to align their monetary policy with the European monetary policy, the independence for each country is reduced. This is the main important reason, this is the main cost of making EU. The next one is this, these countries are not compatible with each other. When they made this European Union and they made the single currency, they had to think this thing that these countries are not compatible in terms of wage rate. In certain countries it's really high, like Switzerland, Norway, and we can compare its wage rate is high compared to the Greece or Italy. Tax rate is different. Similarly, in these countries, it's a Nordic country, the rate is really high, tax rate is really high as compared to the other countries which are located in the in the eastern part of Europe. Business cycles and effect of shocks mean these countries, the economies of certain countries are more affected because of the financial crisis that we had experienced in 2008-9, and certain countries were stable against those financial crises. The next point is shifting the economic effects to other countries. When they are united with each other, despite that certain countries were not affected of financial crisis, the effect of that financial crisis was moved to those countries as well. Like what we have seen that the economy of the Greece, economy of the Spain were highly affected because of financial crisis, and the certain countries like Germany, France, they were stable, but even then they had to support the weaker countries. In that way, Germany and France was also affected because of these financial crises. And the next point is the fortress Europe. Fortress Europe mean when they are making the external trade policy, they are making the same external trade policy, and in that policy they are discouraging firms outside of that bloc, outside of the Europe, to enter in the Europe. And in a way we can say that they are protecting their own European companies from the European market, and they are discouraging firms from the outside of Europe to enter in the European market. Now the important thing is there are certain blocks, certain integration which are from outside the Europe. The most famous one is the NAFTA. There is a move towards greater regional economic integration in the America. We are observing, we are experiencing this sort of integration across the world, like exactly like the in Europe. One movement is in North America, where they made one agreement, one integration, which is called North American Free Trade Area, which comprised of USA, Canada, and Mexico. Other efforts include the Andean Community and Mercosur. These are also in America, but in South America. Hemisphere-wide free trade of the America is also under discussion. There is one other trade agreement between the North America and the South and Central America, which is called the Free Trade of the America, and this is under the discussion, and when they are going to, and in the future they are going to make this sort of agreement as well. Okay. This is a graphical representation of different sort of integrations in America, North and South America. The first one, the green one, is the North America, is a NAFTA, which comprised of USA, Canada and Mexico. Mercosur is in more towards the South America, the orange one. And the next one is the Andean Community, and the Central America, which is only located, these countries located in the central area of America. And then last one is the Caribbean Community, which are the Caribbean countries. They had their agreement as well. So we start with the NAFTA. What is the North Free Trade Agreement? The North Free Trade Area includes the United States, Canada and Mexico. They abolished the 99% of goods traded between the members. The aim of this NAFTA is to reduce the trade up to the 99% trade barriers, which are these tariff related obstacles and non-tariff related obstacles, remove barriers on the cross-country flow of services and products, protects intellectual property rights, and remove most restriction on FDI between member countries, and allow each country to apply its own environmental standards, establishes 2 commissions to impose fines and remove trade privileges, when experimental standards or legislation involving health and safety, minimum wages and child labor are ignored. Unlike EU in NAFTA, but they are proposing that these countries are going to make these cross-border flows of, they are going to make the environmental standards, the first of all, and they are remove all the restriction of FDI flow. The important thing is these countries, like each element is more concerned for certain countries, like protects the intellectual property rights. USA and Canada is more concerned with this thing, protects the intellectual property right, because in Mexico the likelihood of stealing that technology or piracy, like we have in our countries, the piracy problem, they have this issue, and because to protect that thing they put this clause of intellectual property rights protection. The next point is because of this thing, if certain countries or certain firms from those countries are not following the environmental standards or this sort of minimum safety requirements or minimum wage requirements or child labor things, these things, if they are not following those standards of production, then there is some standard commission, established 2 commissions which impose the fines on those companies. Okay, supporters of NAFTA claim that Mexico would benefit from the increased job at a low-cost production move from the supporters of NAFTA claims that Mexico is getting more benefit because of this agreement. Why they think in this way? That because what they are assuming is that the jobs from the USA, because in the cost of labor is high in USA and in Canada, what's happening, the labor or the production or jobs are moving away from those US and Canada to Mexico. And because of this thing, USA and Canada are losing jobs, employment loss, and Mexico are getting more benefit, and they got more jobs. The US and Canada would benefit from access to a large, increasingly prosperous market. The first thing is US and Canada, these firms are getting a new market, a big market of Mexico. The second thing is lower prices of consumers from goods produced in Mexico. They are the raw material what they are availing in Mexico is at the cheaper rate. The next thing is they are benefiting from the low-cost labor, which ultimately reduce the cost of production. And the last one is increase imports by Mexico. They are importing more products from the Mexico. Like what's happening, US companies move to the Mexico and starting to build their products there in Mexico. The cost of production is reduced, and when their products are ready, they ship back those products to the USA. In that way, the level of imports are increased. Level of products, level of imports at the lower rate. This is the important thing. Is the North American free trade area beneficial? This is the main question the scholars are discussing. Critics of NAFTA claim that jobs would be lost and wage level would be declined in the US and Canada. Like we discussed that the jobs are moving away because of the low-cost labor from USA to Mexico. This is the first negative thing that US and Canadian market are experiencing. The next thing is wage level, because that level of wage is lower in Mexico. Might be the producers, the investors, they will not pay to a similar rate like in the USA, like what they were getting before, because they could shift their product. They shift their production unit to Mexico. They will not. Now they have the choice. For instance, if the U.S. laborers they are having $10 per hour in USA, and before this agreement, the investors were forced. They had to pay this money, $10 per hour. But now in Mexico they have $2 per hour of labor rate. And now they will say, these investors, they can demand their laborers in USA that, oh look, we can move our production from USA to Mexico if you will not lower your hourly rate. So the overall, the pressure will be higher. The pressure will increase to reduce the labor rate in USA and Canada. The next one is the pollution would increase due to the Mexico's more lax standards, because the standards are not so strict in Mexico. The pollution level, the global pollution level in the world will be increased, which will directly or indirectly affect on the bordering countries as well. The last one is Mexico would lose its independence. Because the first one is Mexico is going to lose its independence. The first thing is Mexico would lose independence because they have to follow. Mexico has to follow the NAFTA's and rules and regulation, and Mexico have to make their financial policy in accordance with the NAFTA standards. And they are another way we can say that when the US firms or Canadian firms are operating in the Mexico, of course they're bringing in the capital, they're creating the jobs, they're giving the technology, they're giving them efficiency management skills. In that way their multinational companies will capture the industry, and ultimately they will capture the economy. In that way the economy of the Mexico will depend on these multinational companies, and in that way their independence of Mexico's economy will be reduced. This is the one way. Second way is, in that trade agreement the other parties are really strong and they are more politically influenced, or politically stronger countries, and because of their influence is higher, their influence is larger in the agreement, the Mexico can lose their independence in the decisions, in the domestic decisions. Now that we have discussed the both sides, the people who are arguing and promoting the regional agreement, the agreement between the North American countries, and we have seen the arguments which were against this sort of agreements of American countries, this NAFTA. We have seen the pros and cons of NAFTA, and what was the right thing in reality. Research indicates that NAFTA's early impact was subtle, and both advocates and detractors may have been guilty of exaggeration. The first thing is, research shows that these both the people who are the proponents and the people who are against this NAFTA agreement, they were exaggerating the figures on the both sides. This side they are showing the extreme trade benefits of this trade agreement, and on the other, the people who were against this NAFTA's agreement, they were showing that extreme figures of job loss and independence and this sort of thing. NAFTA is credited with helping create increased political stability in Mexico. This is the reality. This research shows that now, because of this economic growth, Mexican economy is more stable. However, December 1994 financial crisis hit the Mexican economy, which because of that this financial crisis, they have to devalue their currency, the Mexican peso, to 35% as compared to US dollars. Because of this financial currency and financial crisis, and because of this sort of devaluation of the Mexican peso, the cost of export is increased, and another thing is, in order to support this Mexican economy, they had to do the bailout. USA did the $200 billion bailout package. They have provided this sort of package to the Mexican economy, and which ultimately, of course, have affected on the US economy as well. And this research of the University of California, Los Angeles campus found that 31,158 jobs were created. In US, they are providing the exact figures, and 28,168 jobs were lost because of this NAFTA, and the net effect was 3,000. Positive. Means overall 3,000 jobs were created in USA. They lost 28,000 and created 31,000, and overall 3,000 jobs was created in a nutshell. Other Latin American countries would also like to join the NAFTA. Because of the success of this NAFTA, other countries in the Latin American countries are willing to join the NAFTA as well. Okay. There is another community, another pact between the American countries is called Andean Pact. Andean Pact is formed in 1969 using the EU model between Bolivia, Chile, Ecuador, Colombia and Peru. This pact, according to this pact, they were trying to follow the European. They have seen the European Union model, and they want to follow the same model. And the four countries of South American countries, Bolivia, Chile, Ecuador, Colombia, and Peru, 5 countries in fact, they try to make one regional integration. They want to regionally integrate with each other. Had more or less failed by the mid-1980s. They were failed to greater extent by mid of 1980s. They reinvigorated this Andean Pact in 1980s, and now operates as a custom union. Custom union, we have seen where the trade barriers are. They don't have the trade barriers, and they have a common trade policy. Renamed the Andean Community in 1997, they renamed from Andean Pact to Andean Community, and signed an agreement in 2003 with Mercosur to restart negotiation towards creation of a free trade area. In 2003 they tried to merge this Andean community with the Mercosur, which we are going to study in the next slides. Okay, what is Mercosur? Mercosur is originated in 1988 as a free trade pact between Brazil and Argentina. This is between only the two countries in the beginning. Later on, it's expanded in 1990. It's expanded to other countries, to Paraguay and Uruguay, and in 2005 with the addition of Venezuela. Initially, there were two countries, and in 1990, two countries are included, and in 2005 they became 5 countries. Diverting trade rather than the creating trade this was Mercosur is also not so much successful because they were more towards diverting trade rather than creating trade, and local firms are investing in industries that are not competitive on a worldwide basis. Initially made progress on reducing trade barrier between member countries, but more recently efforts have stalled. The third point is really important. They are more creating the diverting trade rather than creating trade. This is more important. When they make this sort of agreement, why they are indulge themselves in trade diversion activities rather than trade creation activities. Why they are doing so? This is a really important question. If we see the economic growth level of these countries, these are the developing countries, all 4 countries. Now Brazil is considered as an emerging economy, but at that time, 1980 and 1990, these countries were all these countries were the developing countries, and they made the agreement to promote the trade between each other. That's the important thing. And they made the agreement, they signed the agreement that they have to do the trade, they have to do the more trade, more import and export and this FDI between each other. In order to follow this sort of import and export trade, they have to make a common trade policy. They did that thing as well. But the important thing is, in order to do the trade between each other, in order to encourage this sort of trade, they were forgoing the cheaper trade, a more beneficial trade with the other countries. For instance, if the Brazil was agreed to import the textile products from Argentina, but at that time we could see that Brazil could import the more cheaper textile products from China, or from Vietnam, or from Cambodia. They could do those things, and similar thing goes with the other countries as well. And in that way, we could say that they were involved more in trade diverting activities rather than trade creating activities. The next point was because they made the bloc, and if we borrow the concept of trade fortress, they were bound within the domains of their own, integrated between those countries, between the 5 countries, and they were only involved in that domain, and they were trying to discourage other firms to enter in the market. Because of that thing, and considering these all 5 countries were the developing countries, the level of technology remained low in those countries. That was the more important thing. And when they were indulged in trade between them, the negative thing was their technology was lower as compared to the other countries, and they didn't allow the firms from the developed countries which got the higher technology to enter in those markets. What was the negative thing? They their technology were inferior as compared to the technology of companies belong to the developed countries, and because of this element they couldn't compete in other countries. Firms in these countries, they were only able to compete within 5 countries, and when they go out they couldn't compete in the other markets. That was the most negative thing happened because of this Mercosur agreement. Okay. What is the Central American Trade Agreement and CARICOM? This is the next agreement in the America. There are 2 other trade pacts in America. First one is the Central American Trade Agreement, which is called CAFTA, which is formed in 2005 to lower trade barrier between the US and the member states. The next one is CARICOM, which was formulated in 1973 to establish a custom union, to have a custom union again which have no trade barriers, tariff related and non-tariff related barriers, and same trade policy. Neither pact was achieved its goal yet. In 2006, 6 CARICOM members formed the Caribbean Single Market Economy to lower trade barriers and harmonize macroeconomic and monetary policy between members countries. What is the free trade of the Americas? Talk began. This is another policy, another regional agreement in America. In 1998, April 1998, talks began to establish a free trade of the America, FTAA, by 2005. The FTA was not established, and now support from the US and Brazil is mixed. The US wants stricter enforcement of intellectual property rights. On the other hand, Brazil and Argentina wants the US to eliminate agriculture subsidies and tariffs. This agreement is failed because of 2 things. Because both parties view this agreement differently. I mean, US have concerns and really issues towards the intellectual property. Like we have discussed that in developing countries, US companies or high-tech sector, they are facing the trouble of intellectual property right because of the piracy thing or stealing the technology thing. Patent right is very low, the protection very low, and because of this thing, the US was demanding that the other countries like Brazil, Argentina, they will enforce the intellectual property rights. On the other hand, Brazil and Argentina, what was their expectation from the USA? They were demanding that US will stop giving the subsidy to their indigenous agriculture farmers, because when the US is providing subsidies to their domestic farmers, then of course the foreign farmers from the Argentina and Brazil, when they entered in the USA, they couldn't beat those domestic farmers. And because of this thing, and in addition to this, US has some tariffs as well which relate to the agriculture products, and because of this thing, the Brazilian and Argentinian agriculture producers, they couldn't compete the US firms in USA. The next point is, if the FTAA is established, it will have major implication for the cross-border trade and investment flow within the hemisphere, within the America, which include North and South America. The trade will be higher if it will be successful. Trade will be increased between North and South America, would create a free trade area of 85 million people, who accounted for nearly 18 trillion in GDP in 2008. I mean, it will be a really huge area and huge block for both regions if this trade agreement will be successful. I mean, the number of people are 850 million people are there, and they encountered 18 trillion GDP. I mean, these countries contribute to 18 trillion in GDP only in 2008. What is the status of economic integration in Asia? There are some movements are going on for integration, economic integration as well. Various efforts at integration have been attempted in Asia, but most exist in name of Association of Southeast Asian Nation, ASEAN. And the next one is Asia Pacific Economic Cooperation. These are the two famous economic integration in Asia. The first one is the Association of Southeast Asian, which is established in 1967, currently includes Brunei, Indonesia, Malaysia, the Philippines, Singapore, Thailand, Vietnam, Myanmar, Laos, and Cambodia. These are the member states of the ASEAN. And what they want to foster free trade between member countries and to achieve some cooperation in their industrial policies. The ASEAN Free Trade Area, and the next one is ASEAN the Asian Free Trade Area between the 6 original members of ASEAN came into effect in 2003. In between the ASEAN, this association, 6 original members, they made some sort of agreement in 2003 for the free trade, and both these agreements that we have seen in the ASEAN and AFTA are moving towards establishing a free trade zone, just like EU. Okay, this is the graphical, just a map of Asian countries and about these ASEAN countries, and which includes the Myanmar, Laos, Thailand, Cambodia. If we see this thing, these are the small islands as well. Philippines and Laos. Laos is not the island though, which is located near to the Vietnam. Myanmar is also on the Indian Ocean. Okay, what is the Asia Pacific Economic Cooperation? Asia Pacific Cooperation includes the 21 member states, including the United States, Japan, China. These are the industrialized states, and Japan industrialized nation, and the China is considered lead industrialized nation. Wants to increase the multilateral cooperation between each other. Member states account for 55% of world GDP. This shows the significance of these countries for the whole globe, and 49% of world trade. These two figures shows that if they start cooperating with each other, if this thing Asia Pacific Economic Agreement cooperation it gets succeed, what will be the impact of this cooperation, this integration on the world economy. Again, this is the map. China, as we know, China is on the east side, and this is the Pacific Ocean, and the United States is on the right hand side, and Japan extreme on the left hand side and of Pacific Ocean, and it's of course it's an island, and China, Japan, and United States. These are the APEC members. Okay, what is the status of integration in Africa? This is the last continent where we are going to see some integration. Of course, there are some movements are going on in Africa as well to integrate the countries in terms of economic point of view. Many countries are members of more than one of the 9 blocs. There are also 9 blocs in Africa. Since many countries support the use of trade barriers to protect their economies from foreign competition, meaningful progress is slow. Despite that, they have 9 blocs in Africa, but the overall progress or overall success of the economic integration is very low in Africa. Because what is the reason? Because these countries use trade barriers to protect their domestic industries. And because they have the infant domestic industries which are not stable, they don't have the capability to compete with the international firms. That's why these countries do not allow the foreign firms to enter in the market. The famous one is the East African Community, was relaunched in 2001. The argument most frequently heard is that because these countries have less development and less diversified economies, they need to be protected by the tariff barriers from unfair foreign competition. Given the prevalence of this argument, it has been hard to establish free trade areas or custom unions. However, so far the effort appears futile. Main important thing is, like we said, that they don't have the enough development in their economies, and they are less diversified economies, and they want to protect their local industries and their economies with the help of the tariffs from the unfair foreign competition. Given the prevalence of this argument, it has been hard to establish free trade areas and custom union in those regions. The next point is, what does the economic integration mean for managers? We have learned different sort of this sort of integration across the globe. We have seen the integration in the North America, then integration in South America, then integration in North and South America, then integration in Asia, and then integration in Africa. But the important thing is, what is the significance of this sort of regional integration for the managers? The first point is, it opens new market for the managers. Manager mean for the business. For the business point of view, we can see that it increases the new market. It allows firms to realize cost economies by centralizing production in those locations where the mix of factors, cost and skill is optimal. They can what they can do, they can increase the economy of scale. They install their production in one country, and they can serve to the other country, neighboring markets as well. But within each grouping, the business environment becomes competitive. This is a negative thing for the business. Because of this integration, despite that these firms have got new markets and they have more growth opportunities, but the negative thing is, because of this integration, competition is higher, and the global market the environment become more competitive. It's really difficult for firms to sustain and grow in the competitive market. There is a risk of being shut out of the single market by the creation of the trade fortress. Because of the shut off the single market by the creation of trade there is like we have discussed that these blocks, these integrations, these countries, they have created the trade fortress, and they encourage firms only to operate within the countries, and they discourage foreign firms to enter in those blocks. Okay. This is the small case study that we what happened about this European firm, what they have experienced of this European Union because of this economic integration. Atog Holding, this is the name of the company, which is a Dutch company where the industry is the kitchen appliance. Atog thought it was a very well placed to benefit from the single market, but found it tough going. Atog's plant is just 1 mile from the German border and near the center of EU's population. The company thought it could be catered to both South and Northern Europe by production of 2 main product line and selling these standardized Euro products to European consumers. The many funds of the economy of scale drive from the mass production of the standardized range of the product. This is a brief description of this company, that the location of this company and what is the impact of European Union on this company. The location of this company is on the border of the Germany, near the German border. And important thing is that they have this production unit there, and they thought that while having the production unit on the border, they could cater not only on the Netherlands, they could only cater the remaining southern Europe and southern and northern Europe from that point on, and they could introduce a different sort of version of the product to cater the needs of the different markets within the EU. Unfortunately, and important thing is, because they have the production unit there on the border and intend to cater several markets, they thought that they will economy of scale concept will be raised and the cost of production will be reduced there as well. The attack quickly discovered that the Euro consumer is a myth. Why? Consumer preference may much more across nations than consumer preferences vary much more across nations than Attack had thought. Consider ceramic stove tops. Attack planned to market just 2 varieties throughout the EU, but found that it needs 11. Belgians who cook in huge pots require extra large burners. German like oval pots and burners to fit. The French need small burners and very low temperature for simmering sausage and broths. German like on knobs on the top, and French wants them on the front. Both German and French prefer black and white appliances. The British demand a range of colors, including peach, pigeon blue, and the mint green. Despite these problems, foreign sale of Attack kitchenware increased from 4% to total revenue in 1985 to 25%, but the company now has a more realistic assessment of the benefit of the single market among the group of countries, and now believes the range of design and product range rather than the magic bullet of them. Important message which comes from this case study is that in the beginning, this company, the managers were believing that might be there is a Euro consumers. Euro consumer mean they are same consumer because they belong to the same market. But in fact, it was not like this. The consumer from the different markets, they were what they were demanding. Their demands were different from each market. German, they have the different sort of demand. They had different design, different color they needed. The British, they needed different. The French, they demanded different. And this company they catered these customers differently. They had to produce. Initially, they thought they could produce only the 4 different versions, 4 different designs of the same product. But later on, they realized there is no Euro consumer. They had to make different designs for each market, and they had made 11 different designs for each market. Because of this thing, although the level of profit increased from 4% to 25%, but the important thing what the management learned from this European market experience is that there is no single taste within the same regional market. If despite the market is integrated, but the taste and the preferences of local people remain there within the market. This is the main thing what they have discussed in this case study. We have another case study of Martin's Textile, which is provided in the book. You can see this is really interesting case study of textile firm located in the USA, and how NAFTA, this agreement between the Mexico, Canada, and USA, how this affected on their business. And they had explained that how initially they thought to shift their production unit from USA to Mexico. They did it, and later on how this shifting and this trade integration impacted on the level of their business. Okay, these are the discussion questions, and I have related to that case study that you had to think about. Okay, now we can do the quick summary of the lecture. What we had discussed about the first of all the benefits of the euro, and what are the negative things of the euro, and saving. The first of all, it increases saving. It's easier to compare the prices for the consumers. The firms are forced to become more competitive. And the next one, the cost of production is reduced. This is the most important thing, and it gives a strong boost to the development of highly liquid pan-European capital market like Nasdaq, and increases the range of investment options for both the individuals and for the institutions. For the negative thing of EU is the loss of control over national monetary policy. EU is not optimal currency area for both for wage rate and tax rate and business cycle. In terms of wage rate, tax rate, business cycle, effect of shocks, these countries which are member states of the Europe are different. And the next thing is shifting the economic effect of other countries. These are interconnected. These countries are interconnected with each other. If one is suffering some financial troubles, the other country will ultimately, or they are directly or indirectly, will be influenced from that effect. Another is political influence because of EU. Okay, North American free trade includes the United States trade. NAFTA includes the Canada. It abolished, these are the main, abolishing the tariffs, remove barrier, protect intellectual property rights, removes restriction on the trade between the members, allow each country to environmental standards, and these benefits to all countries. The next that we had studied in the next regional agreement was the Andean Pact between the Bolivia, Chile, Ecuador, and Colombia, and Peru in 1969. The next one was the Mercosur between the Paraguay, Uruguay, Venezuela, Brazil, and Argentina. Okay, there are some talks and some efforts going on to make the free trade of the America between Brazil and USA. And association of Southeast Asian, when we talk about the Asian region, Asian integration, there are ASEAN and FTA, AFTA, regional integrations. The next, when we talk about the Europe, the Africa, there is some East African community is really renowned regional integration, which was launched in 2001. And this is the we discussed for today, and we have learned some sort of different regional integrations across the globe. We have seen in Europe, we have seen the regional integration in North America, South America, in Asia, in Africa, and we had discussed the positive things and negative things of these economic integration. And in the next lecture we are going to discuss about that political influence or political motivators for these integrations. Thank you for today. Allah Hafiz.